Well, as you might expect, here at Quality Digest, we closely follow a lot of large manufacturers in a variety of sectors. One of those is the Ford Motor Company, or an organization that in many ways really first established the pattern of modern industrial quality more than a century ago, right? With Henry Ford, its founder. In recent years, Ford's quality journey has, shall we say, intensified. I think that's a fair way of saying that. In the wake of last decade's Great Recession, Ford, like the rest of the major U.S. automakers, faced shriveling sales and the specter of bankruptcy. Unlike GM and Chrysler, however, Ford did not accept government TARP funding. Now, TARP, T-A-R-P, stands for the Troubled Asset Relief Program, which is essentially a federal bailout underwritten by taxpayers. However, Ford did accept several $1 billion in TALF money. That's T-A-L-F. Now, I didn't know about TALF.
I've never heard about TALF. Okay.
TALF money. Now, TALF stands for the Term Asset-Backed Securities Loan Facility. Now, that's a program that's a lot less well-known than the TARP program, and which essentially is super low-cost federal loans. Now, Ford did take that money, and in exchange for that dough, which came to a tidy $7 billion bucks. $7 billion. In taking that money, they agreed to retool many of their plants with an eye toward electric vehicles and models with greater fuel economy. And this was in 2008, 2009.
So that was part of the deal. They had to do that.
TALF money, was they going to do that? Now, at that time, again, that was 2009, Ford was helmed by CEO Alan Mulally, and the recession just really sped up the company's transformation, which was already in motion at the time. Mulally and his successor, Mark Fields, had extraordinary vision around the future of the company, which involved not only electric and hybrid cars, but autonomous vehicles as well. The vision was of Ford as less of a car maker, and more of a mobility company.
Right, they pushed that term a lot. Yeah.
And as a mobility company, what they meant was that a Ford car was really kind of a moving Internet of Things device. You're going to be connected to everything, and you'd be able to do everything you want right from your car. But the reality was a little less spectacular maybe than what Mulally and Fields promised, especially when it comes to a metric that's sometimes a little hard to predict: shareholder satisfaction and perceived stock market valuation. Right. Although Ford returned to profitability not long after the recession ended, and in fact they earned a very, very impressive $4.6 billion in 2016, the shareholders never really quite bought into the vision. Flashier companies like Elon Musk's Tesla nameplate really have far better stock performance, even when there's little and sometimes zero profit associated with these companies.
Isn't that interesting?
It's interesting.
People's psychology.
It's a psychology.
You're Ford, you're a car company. What's this mobility stuff? Right. Oh, Elon Musk, that's cool.
But we're making almost $5 billion a year.
Wait.
Well, all this led to Fields' ouster in May, and new CEO Jim Hackett recently had a meeting with 100 major Ford shareholders where he touted the company's ongoing evolution and streamlined approach. In fact, Ford plans to trim a whopping $14 billion in costs over the next 4 years, most of which is going to come from reduced material and engineering costs. The result will likely be a company offering simpler designs and fewer options, to be honest, to the customers as well. Now, how this is all going to play out with the customers, much less the shareholders, is very much an open question. Since Hackett's meeting with the shareholders a bit more than 3 weeks ago, Ford's share price actually, I wrote it was essentially flat. It's flat. I just checked it. It's exactly the same $12.09 per share that it was through. It had a little bump after he had that meeting where they said, hey, we're going to trim $14 billion. Went up to, I think, $12.34. Now it's right back down to the same $12.09. So does that matter? Do the shareholders buy into it? I guess not.
I mean, I'm wondering sometimes if, this is kind of a different deal, but remember when Costco CEO,
I can't remember.
Whatever his name is. Basically, he said, look, I'm going to pay my employees good wages. I'm going to give them good benefits. And yes, it's at the expense of profits. Shareholders weren't happy with that. And he basically said, too bad.
Yeah.
He says, we're not, basically, we're not going to be Walmart.
Yeah.
We're going to be Costco, and we're going to make this a good place to work. I'm just wondering sometimes if CEOs, I guess they can be kicked off, but sometimes whether you just need to make a stand and say, look, we can't stay being a car company because cars aren't what they were 100 years ago.
Yeah, and again, we're going to get to this later in the show a little bit, but there's a lot that goes into the perception of a company. Profit's a big one, you would think, for shareholders, but in this case, the shareholders are not really paying that much attention. And I think Ford's board is kind of scratching their head being like, well, $4.6 billion in profit, not revenue, that's profit.
Right.
Last year is a heck of a big amount of profit.
Well, the thing, I guess, what was in previous years?
I'm sure
it was significantly higher. So they don't like to see them go.
Well, no, but it was lower back in the recession. It's been going up since then.
Right,
in past, it's been higher as a percentage.
Yeah.
But I think $4.6 billion may be their high, actually, all the time. But it's, of course, it's not what it was in the past because as a percentage, it's lower of revenue. But in any event, it's Ford is performing well. The shareholders aren't buying into it. No, we'll continue to keep an eye on it and see where it goes from there.